Slow Deep with Uni was previously the Sensory Playspace podcast. Enjoy conversations from these archives in our first year of podcasting. Hi, and welcome everyone. I am Uni. I use she and they pronouns, and I am your host of the Sensory Playspace podcast by Self-Study. Today we have Courtney Brame with us, and we are gonna just have a chat. So what's up, Courtney? What's been good with you lately?
Oh, that's a big question. So literally yesterday, I just organized and presented at my conference from my nonprofit organization, which is something positive for positive people. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports people navigating herpes stigma. This conference was where I organized a couple of presenters to touch on how we can minimize herpes stigma in the healthcare setting and sex education, and highlight the experiences that people who have herpes are experiencing through a lens of mental health and emotional health. And then I presented some survey data on people's lived experiences with herpes at this conference, alongside some of my peers, sex therapist Nikita Fernandez, a sexuality educator Dakota Rampin, and then one of my board members who's a family physician, Dr. Eveline Molina Dacker. In addition to having wrapped that up, like I'm on a high right now and I'm excited because it was such a successful event. And then I just moved across the country from Portland, Oregon to Passaic, New Jersey. So I'm a New Jersey East Coaster resident now. And I started yoga therapy training a little bit over 3 weeks ago. Yeah, the first meeting was 3 weeks ago. And these are the most prevalent things right now as far as what's happening with me, and we'll talk about the other big aha moment, I'm sure, as the podcast goes on. But yeah, that's what's going on with me. And I'm Courtney. I also and enjoy anime. I enjoy really deep, vulnerable conversations. I enjoy yoga. I'm a certified yoga instructor. And I'm going into yoga therapy to essentially support my community. As someone who's living with herpes, I find that emotional support is something that is definitely needed. And when I was diagnosed in 2013, yoga was supportive for me. And now I want to be able to learn more of those sciences of yoga to support people in restoring that emotional and physical balance within themselves. So that's a little bit about me and what's going on with me. I hope I didn't just hijack your podcast.
I mean, we're here to talk with you. So yeah, thank you for giving us a synopsis about you and kind of just introducing us to your world. There's a lot of nuggets there and a lot to kind of play off of. But I think where I want to start, really for me, being in the body is everyday work, right? As a person that has learned how to explore being in my body and learned how to express to others how to be in their bodies, I feel and I find that it is something that I can't. It's non-negotiable, right? I have to make efforts for every single day, and some days those efforts are really easy, and they're easy to come by, and some days they're harder. I think that yoga was a point that really got me to explore being in my body in a different way. And you brought up yoga therapy and that you're starting that training. That's been something that I've been looking into. Can you tell us a little bit about yoga therapy and why? What's piquing your interest in that?
Yeah, so it was a very short window of time where I wondered what the difference was between yoga and yoga therapy. So I have a 500-hour registered yoga teacher training certification. And from the 200 hour, I would say I was taught how to put people into postures, and I needed more. And then the 300 hour was where I started to understand the philosophy and what was happening for me, not just physically with being more flexible or strong, but what was happening for me emotionally, like having that emotional flexibility and this expansive uh, draw to spirituality, right? And when I came across yoga therapy, the main consistent definition that I got was it's applying the science of yoga to different healing modalities. So you're using the science of yoga to restore restore imbalances into the body and the emotional state a person might be in. So there's all these different yoga concepts that I won't use the names for. Some of them I butcher anyway. Uh, Applying them to the body, applying them to the emotions that a person might be experiencing. So if someone's like always on up here, right, we want to apply things into their life that, you know, may lower that up here all the time and bring them into more balance. Because one of the consistent things that I'm seeing with illness is that a lot of times it's an imbalance, an overproduction of something or an underproduction of something. So yoga or yoga therapy is one of the avenues of looking at the imbalances that a person may be experiencing, whether that be physical or emotional, and then finding using the teachings of yoga and the philosophies and the science to bring balance back. So I was curious about applying this to people with herpes because for so long, like I've been someone who hasn't really had many symptoms. I've had 3 occurrences over 11 years of being positive, and I got into yoga immediately after my diagnosis, and I didn't know that this was impacting me. But over time, when I started to see like, oh, maybe this is, and I started to look at how it was impacting me and find the language to be able to speak to it. I wanted to start to communicate that to other people, especially this community of people that I'm providing these ongoing various levels of service for.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's it's so interesting to me. Like I have my degree in exercise science, so I've been in study of the body since, right out of high school. But even through my youth, like I was really connected to the body. And I think that the way that a lot of people like enter into learning about yoga is from the asana, right? Like from the postures and the poses and looking to achieve a goal of like doing a headstand or doing balancing poses or looking thin or whatever the thing is. A lot of it is aesthetically based, I feel. Um, but it's been interesting for me to kind of like journey through yoga from my spiritual lens. For me, yoga is very connected to my spiritual practice and my spiritual body. um, and the way that like the way that I'm able to get into my physical body and those two things coming together has really shifted the way that I exist in the world. And I ebb and flow like through life with my practice. Sometimes I'm like really on it. Like right now I'm really in my yoga practice. I love it. I'm about it. I think about it. I want it. And sometimes I'm like really not about it. And I realize for me, whenever I'm really not about it, it's whenever I'm really struggling to be in my body and to take up space, like in my own container. But it's interesting to me, if I can just give some visibility to the identities that I see with you. And you can like correct me if I'm inaccurate, but like as a Black man, um, taking up space like in the yoga world and kind of like leading some sort of like curiosity, some sort of like advocacy for yoga. That's really interesting to me. How does that feel for you? And like what feels big or important to you in that?
Yeah, so going into it, I always would see, oftentimes that I was the only man in class, that I was the only Black person in class. And then you combine these intersecting identities as a Black man in a yoga setting, especially like gym yoga, like at a fitness
Mhm.
studio. It's more accessible because it's just part of my gym membership, right? So more people will come, and I would see that I'm the only person there. So it's influenced like where I sit. I make an effort to be in the front of the class, so I'm not like behind any of the women, doing downward dog. Uh, Not to be creepy. Like I've gone out of my way to not be put in any type of position where I'm looked at in a different type of way. Like I'm there for literally this yoga class. I'm not really here to meet people or do anything else. Like I just wanted to come. I want to get my movement in. And really what I'm there for is Shavasana. Because when you get done with that class and you lay down, like I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep at that portion of class. But yeah, it's been, I would even say useful too, because as a Black man in yoga, where there's so little representation, when we think about yoga, at least here in the West, like we think of, certain brands of clothing on certain kinds of bodies at studios. We think about, these people getting their green smoothies after class, going to yoga on Saturday, Sunday, and then going to Trader Joe's. That's not me. Like I'll go do my workout, I'll lift weights, and then I'll go into a yoga class, right? And then I go home, go on about my business, right? Um, as a teacher, it was kind of the same thing, right? Most of the people who are studying to be teachers are white women. Even in my yoga therapy class, I'm the only Black person, man, and Black man who's in my yoga therapy cohort. And I just want to like bring awareness to the fact that, yeah, there's not a whole lot of visibility here. And even for the people who are visible, I think that it would require so much more effort to become visible, like with competing in with that saturated market. Because even for me getting into yoga, it was hard to get me into yoga. It took for me to not only hear from my friend, hey, you should come to yoga, you should come to yoga, you should come to yoga, but also for me to have a thing happen in my life that, made me consider yoga and do my own research and see, is this thing really for me? Because it was so much more than just what I thought it was looking from the outside in as stretching. Like I said, it like there was some emotional connectedness, some mental connectedness that was happening there. And even on a spiritual level, where growth was occurring before I was conscious of the growth that was occurring. Um, but yeah, and I think just to answer your question in a sentence, there's definitely expectations that I have on myself as a Black man yoga teacher and student. It's like I have to kind of go out of my way to defy these stereotypes, right? Like, I more so prefer yin yoga as well, like very gentle on the body, do it before sleep. But I think that maybe like there may be some expectations about there being more like swag to the class or like a different type of music, which people do that. And for me, I would say like I think that I try and align with the traditional like yoga values, even at the expense of being myself, which that's a challenge in itself too. But it's more of an internal battle for me because it's like, okay, I want to do this right and respectfully, but also like this is who I am. This is how I'm showing up. And while there's not a lot of people who look like me who show up the way that I do, there is only one me. There's only one of each of these teachers. There's no one like them, regardless of the archetypes or the types of classes that we attend. People come to our classes because they generally like the person who's teaching it.
Yeah. There's so many things you said that I want to comment on. I was like, wait. So I'm gonna try to like backpedal into some of these things because there's so many good nuggets that like just sparked like conversation points for me. Like first off, as like a person of color, like I am a multiracial person. I have, my genes, my ancestry is Black Southern, um, Indigenous, Native, Navajo, white European. and probably a lot of other things. But I feel that like I experience a lot of just like expectation, right? No matter where I'm at. If I'm in white spaces, if I'm in mixed spaces, if I'm in BIPOC spaces, if I'm in a very specific BIPOC space, if I'm in queer spaces, there's this expectation. Um, and especially whenever I'm in less diversified spaces, there's this expectation that I'm carrying like the story, the like representation of an entire group of people. And that feels that gives me a lot of feelings a lot of the time, right? And so I think that that was part of the reason why I wanted to like bring that up of like you being like specifically a black man taking up space in a very 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 in America, like a very like white space, in a very white space that is predominantly like dominated and representation by like white women. um and looking at like the things that you kind of brought to surface were interesting to me because they weren't my initial thoughts, right? You're like, oh, like I'm going into the room, I want to make sure that no one has a misconception of why I'm there, right? Like I'm there to do my thing for me. I'm not there to like check out people's butts while they're in down dog. I'm just there to like take care of myself. And like ultimately what what our like practices, our rituals, like our self-care is supposed to be about. um I also like that you pointed out and kind of brought this visibility that painted a story for me of like what your class is like and like what feels important to you. And for me, like as a person of color, like even more so, like cultural reverence feels special, but it also feels like necessary. And I find that it is also really hard. It's a big weight to carry, right? Like I already have my own weight of my everyday responsibilities, my everyday life, like my past, my trauma, my like workings, my survival in the systems. And then I feel that I also have this like responsibility to like sometimes like overcompensate in some kind of way towards making sure that like I'm doing the right things and making sure that I'm telling the stories correctly and making sure that like the ways that I'm taking up space presents like the roots and the foundations of the things that I'm like bringing to surface. And you didn't say it in that way, but that was how I received it. So I don't know if I'm like on point or if I'm like just kind of like placing myself in your story. But I wanted to chat about that a little bit. If that, I don't know how that feels for you.
Yeah, we can chat about that a little bit. And I think that, yeah, oftentimes going into a space, because I'm a straight black man and I am in a lot of like sex education, right? This is a predominantly white woman's run space. So is like the yoga world. And even in like, I like anime, right? So this is probably one of the places that you don't see a whole lot of black men, black people really. So I'm in these spaces fairly often where there's not, another me or visible. But when there is, like, I recognize that I get really, really excited, right? And I try not to be too excited or seem like avoidant or dismissive because there's somebody else. And there's so many different interpretations of these kinds of expressions of excitement or, nervousness, right? So carrying, what'd you say? I think you said something along the lines of like carrying the weight of other people's expectations, like on behalf of an entire community of people. I can only really be responsible for, honoring the standards that I have for myself and other people, whatever their expectations are of me, right? Like I can't control their perception of, my expression, my presence, but I can control mine. And I choose to, as I enter these spaces, right, like be intentional. Intentionality is a very big word for me in my vocabulary right now. And I think that it is important to be intentional with the environments that I bring myself into because of all of the potentiality for harm, not just to other people, but also for myself that could happen, not just in a physical sense, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually. right? There's all these different ways that harm can occur, that it can express itself. And I'm very mindful of that for myself as I go into these different varieties of spaces, especially in the yoga sense.
Yeah, that's real, right? Because like we can't carry the weight of other people, and we do, right? Just naturally, even if we're working really hard, like boundaries is something I'm working really hard on right now. And it's my life's work. It's not the glamorous life work, but it is an everyday effort, and I fail a lot at it. I talk about that a lot whenever I teach like kink education and intimacy work. And in that space, I talk about consent, like consent and ethics. And every day I realize in some like big or small way, like how I violated my own consent. And I have to like deal with that because it's me against me. And whenever we talk about boundaries, sometimes it's like, oh, it's this big thing outside of us, but it's really just me against me always. And whenever I'm good with myself and I'm in a like grounded place with myself and I'm like really taking care of myself, like that flows with more ease. And whenever I'm not, like I see all the ways that I do like little bitty things to like push my edges in ways that like I don't really want to. Um at the root, right? So yeah. I am really curious because like my one-on-one work often attracts and I hold a lot of space for men specifically. So in the intimacy work that I do, it often attracts men into this space. And a lot of what we work on is relational, I would say like evolution, right? So men come into the space with a desire to connect, to expand the ways that they are existing within relationship, the ways that they experience sex and their sexuality, the ways that they are exploring intimacy, the ways that they're communicating, the types of relationships that they're holding. And a lot of the work that we do one on one is really, really specific intimacy work. You know, people often enter with this grandiose idea of like, oh, this is a space for sexual exploration. And often we backpedal to the basics. And when we close containers, often people will leave with more than what they expected when they arrive. Um, and so I'm really curious, like working with like herpes, working with stigmas, working in this like you're working in a lot of spaces that one have like standards and stereotypes and generalizations. So you're taking up space in a way that is a little bit disruptive, right? Like without even trying to be, just like existing. You're like, hey, I'm here in space. You're taking that space up. Um, but you're also kind of like representing the possibilities for you essentially, but like you taking up space and becoming visible for you also is creating that like visibility and I would say inspiration for other people like you. Is there anything that is there like intentionality? You said intentionality. Is there intentionality behind that? Like, are you doing this with any specific intent as a man, as a black man taking up space?
It's interesting because no, I haven't been intentional about it at all. I think that it was just like a sense of focus, a sense of purpose, if you will. And the herpes journey is really where this whole thing started. So I get herpes and then I'm like, okay, I don't want to have outbreaks. What can I do? Do yoga? Bet. Do yoga. A couple years go by. Someone asked me, hey, have you considered being a teacher? No, I haven't. Like, what's that process? Go into it, learn about it, and there we are. As I ventured into this advocacy space, what I find is that it's not just, as someone with herpes, drawing in other people who have herpes. It's also this component of being a man who communicates about the experiences that I have around herpes, drawing in women who are attracted to men who want to understand a man's experience a little bit better. And I recognize that my visibility in this space, right, kind of similar to you. You mentioned that like 80% of your clients are men. For me, being visible, I would say that probably 90 to 95% of who I talk to are women.
Mm.
And there's a desire and a need for women to, right, like they talk to me, and I think that perhaps there's this expectation that, you know, there should be more men who are at this place about their herpes diagnosis. But for what I had to go through to get here, if there's not a roadmap, it may take people, you might not find a guy who is in his 20s or, even early 30s who has the ability to even communicate about his sexual health status or communicate, hey, I have herpes, right? And so I feel that now, coming from a lot of the conversations that I have, starting with being about herpes and then evolving into more of, okay, well, what's your relationship to sex? What's your relationship to relationships? What's your relationship to your emotions about relationships? What's your relationship to yourself? Going into that territory tells me that there's actually a lot more room and space for people to explore that conversation. There's a lot of potential there for people, if they are willing to go there, to actually take it upon themselves to go there and start to explore these things with curiosity. And that's kind of where my intention lies now, is with not just being myself. My therapist told me about this. He would say, hey, you need to be more vulnerable. And I'm like, I am. I'm talking about having herpes. What's more vulnerable than that? And he was saying, like, no, that's not it. And I think I get it now that I've graduated therapy. So he and I, like, we just kind of ran out of stuff to talk about. And I just got to a point where I'd process things out loud with him on the phone and, like, say what I was doing. But he was really speaking to this. What I'm talking about here now is, as an emotionally mature and aware, I would say at the very least, Black man, there's not a lot of representation of that. And I understand why. Like the same way with herpes, most people who have herpes are okay, don't have symptoms. And honestly, if I wasn't on the forefront of this advocacy for herpes education, I wouldn't have a reason to talk about it. My relationships are fine. I don't have any issues with dating or disclosing my status to anyone, as I'm sure most people who have it are. But I would say a small percentage of people who are struggling, they are most vocal about it because they're struggling. But the majority of people, I believe, the same way that I would talk about herpes, it's the same thing with maybe more emotionally intelligent and mature men who are out there who just don't have a reason to be out there. They're in their relationships, taking care of their families, and the people who are having issues or problems, these are the ones who are probably a lot more, vocal or willing to explore, like, identify and find someone who need, like, leadership, I would say, like, who need some sort of inspiration, some sort of a roadmap or a blueprint for that. Because like I said, I watch anime, I do yoga, and I'm in this sex education space. There's no one who looks like me, at least not super visible in these spaces. And it's lonely and it's isolating. And so in a more intentional way, I think that I am striving to not only connect with other men, Black men who are at this state of emotional being, but also to foster and create my own sort of communities and roadmap for people who may not be here yet to get there a lot sooner, because it's so necessary for us.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think like something that comes up for me a lot is you mentioned vulnerability, right? And something that comes up a lot for me. Last year I'm poly. I date poly and I date solo poly. And last year I had a partner, and we were in a conversation and we were talking about we had I'm very much a conversationalist. Like intellect is super sexy for me, and I love being able to like explore all sorts of things. Hence, here I am podcasting. But we were talking about, I had seen this post and it had mentioned, it compared like openness to vulnerability, right? And openness is being able to share something that you have processed, right? That may feel vulnerable. But vulnerability is the ability to share something in the moment, in the rawness of it, and be witnessed and held and processed with someone like from that raw state. And whenever I read that, I was like, damn, that's me. Like, I'm super open. I can talk about anything. You ask me any question, I'm super down to talk about pretty much any subject if there is like some sort of maturity in it, right? Like, I'm not going to fight. We're not going to have combative conversation, but we can talk about hard topics. We can talk about deep emotions. We can go pretty much anywhere. But getting me to share something that I'm like in the processing of, like I'm a master of like being able to navigate around being like truly vulnerable. And that's been, I had this conversation with my partner at the time, and we were both like, whoa, that's deep. Because that's both of us, you know, we're very intellectual, we're very heady, very philosophical. And being able to be vulnerable is not only a practice, but there's like an art to it, because I think that there's still a lot of responsibility that comes with vulnerability, right? Like there is consent, there's the ability to understand the capacity of whomever you're sharing with. It's like understanding the space and the time and the place. Like there's not, vulnerability is acceptable and it's welcomed and it's needed, but not all spaces at all times welcome our vulnerability. Not all spaces at all times can hold our vulnerability. And what I've been like really like just processing and like contemplating a lot of, especially in the dating world. And right now, I'm queer, so I date, and I'm pansexual, so I date all types of people. I'm attracted to all types of people. Um, I very frequently date men. And a lot of times what comes up that I've seen, it's not just with men. It is something that happens with like all of us, is people are really good conversationalists and not really good communicators, right? So the conversation piece is really good. It's like, what are you doing? What's going on? What shows are you watching? What are your thoughts on this like worldly thing that has nothing specific to do with you? But communication touches in on our emotions and our feelings and our vulnerability and our needs and our desires, and all of these pieces that are like deep, deep, deep inside of us that like touch our heart and our soul and our bodies and put us in a place of exposure. Um, whether it be that we are like standing up for ourselves or asking for something that we want, or we, you know, we're like creating a boundary or space. Um, and the way that, the thing that I've seen is that the more that I practice communication, the better I become at it, even if I'm communicating with people who aren't like who don't have as much like practice in communication as I do. Um, and I see that in like the smallest of ways, like being on dating apps. Um, it's really common for people to be like, "How are you?" Right? So if I ask you, "How are you?" that's like a closed question, right? Good. The conversation goes nowhere, right? So it's not even a good conversational skill. But beyond that, it's not a good communication skill, because the intent, if your intent, which I feel that at the root, all of our intent on dating apps is to try to connect with someone. Even if our connection desires are different, like we're there to try to create connection. And this communication piece, like, and even the conversational piece, but really the communication piece, I found is what is a glue for me in connection.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in. Oh, the how are you thing, right? When people ask how are you, I often don't believe that they really mean it the way that it's meant to be asked. Like you ask how are you in passing, or when you're making a phone call on your way or something. I'm like, what if I actually have a thing to say to you? So one thing that I've done is like that's kind of a I use that as a framework of seeing like how invested someone is in me and how much I may invest in them emotionally. Because what I find is that sometimes people ask, how are you? Because they want to know, not actually how you are, because they want to tell you how they are. And they're
Yeah.
assessing whether or not you're in a place where you can listen to them. Because sometimes I've told people exactly how I am. And then it goes, oh, I, me, and that's what it becomes. Now it becomes about you. And I'm like, wait, we didn't even address what I said to you. Like I told you something that was very vulnerable, right? And communicative. And I think that when, we're rejected in that way enough times, we start to not become bad communicators, but we just stop communicating, right? You ask me how I am. All right, good. And I just leave it at that. And that's kind of, yeah, that's like my issue with how are you? Like you asked me before to talk and I told you, and I feel like you heard me and you asked me another like follow-up question. And here we are, the whole podcast episode topic probably changed because of you genuinely asking me how I am. And I so appreciate that quality of presence because like you said, people are looking to connect. And oftentimes like people really just have to understand how to be present. And I feel like that's what I got from you, which is that presence.
Yeah. The ability to be present is layered, right? Like it's hard because for a lot of us, it's hard to be in our bodies, right? It's hard to be here in this physical state. It's hard to be here in this moment. There's so much stress, there's so much anxiety, there's so much stimulation, there's so much worry, there's so much pressure. And so for me to hit pause for 5 seconds, right? For 10 seconds, for a minute, and be like, Courtney, what's good with you? It's two part. It's like two people making an effort. I'm hitting pause and I'm like, cool, like I'm gonna receive whatever you have to say. What's good with you? And I've prepared myself for whatever you say, right? You might be like, my life is shit. And I'm like, okay, we're going. We're gonna
Right.
go into it, right?
Yeah, I told you about this big life thing of what I'm doing. I told you about my move. I told you about like personal stuff I've got going on and my career shift. And yeah, you just held space. And, that makes me think about like how and why men may come to you. And so much of that is like being such a great and present listener, right? Like I see why you would have so many men come to you because as a man, I think that what I see is that a lot of us don't feel heard or listened to because so much of our identity as men is wrapped up in how useful we are, right? So even a defense mechanism, unconscious, could be if you ask me how I am, I say, good, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I will then shift it to where I'm not communicating actually. In fact, I'm just defaulting to what I think you want, which is really to ask you want me to ask you how you are so that I can fix your problem, right? But you just listening, I can see how men will be so drawn to that because we are in a time in the world where that's not like an okay thing, right? Like you want to be like we're shifting cultures, I want to say, or there's like an attempt to shift the culture depending on where you are on the internet. Like you may see very divisive content of like women are oppressed and have been repressed and men are trash and why would you do anything for men, right? Like there's a lot of that happening and I see like a longing and desire for men to just be just that in the sense of what it means to be a man or what it means to be masculine. Like there's a strong pull to that, uh and there's just not a lot of like representation of it, and it's not safe to be that necessarily because if we look at what our leadership roles look like with men. I think that there's this perception of men being that way. So people or women, if we're just talking in this context of men women relationships, like being more rebellious, if you will, or men like not being really trusted with the energy that you're giving right now, which is that receptive listening, like calm, peaceful, which is probably why I'm talking so much, because I feel so heard and listened to, right? And people say things like men don't talk about their feelings or don't want to talk. I think a lot of it is that we may not feel listened to. We may not feel like the person that we're speaking to is present with us, and like they just want something from us, or they want us to do something for them, or they think that we have an expectation. So yeah, I wanted to say something about that when you first mentioned like all of the men who work with you, and I'm like, well, I see why.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to comment on that, but I think the thing that I want to like start with is there's this like there's a thing that I say like ask, don't assume, right? And so I think that oftentimes whenever we are attempting to connect, we are moving at a pace faster than what connection actually happens at. So we are moving from our past, right? You're like, I'm a man. Your expectation, right? You're already putting something on me. Your expectation is that I'm here to hold space, right? And so I have to show up in this specific way. And that takes you out of the present, that takes you out of the vulnerability, that takes you out of the ability to trust. But that also, in parts, puts the space of like taking you out of the ability to be trusted, right? So if I'm here, if I'm asking you how are you, that's me also being vulnerable, right? Like I'm putting myself out to hold space for whatever you're going to say, even if I want for you to hear my story, right? Like if you can't open up to me, this happened to me like just this week with someone online, like the conversation starter. I was like, what's been good with you lately? And they responded, everything. What about you? And I was like, that is what? And I'm
That
like,
is not safe.
instantaneously, I'm annoyed because I'm like, and I like took a breath and I was like, cool, cool, cool. I'm here to like connect with people, and asking questions like helps me understand you, right? Like if you can't answer a question, everything is not an answer to that question. It to me, like the way that I receive it is it's a deflect of vulnerability, right? It's and a deflect of vulnerability, one-sided vulnerability is unsafe, right? So as as a person in connection, and if we're in this like dichotomy of like man and woman, right? As a woman trying to connect with men, and as a man trying to connect with women, if one of us is just, if both of us are not exposing parts of ourselves, we don't have to go from 0 to 100. But me saying, what's been good with you today? Or what's been good with you lately? Give me one specific thing that helps paint a picture, that helps create connectivity, that helps bring down the walls. It gives me a visibility of like, one, what space you're in life, two, what space you're willing to hold, and like three, like where you're willing to open up, right? If you're like, oh, like me and my mom have been having a great relationship. I'm like, oh, cool. Like that is something that is important to you. I can create assumptions that can create more space for conversation and connection and exploration. But if you instantaneously deflect and move into this like masculine role that you've been taught that's what masculinity and men are, for me and for a lot of people, and they may not have the vocabulary or the visibility or the understanding to be able to articulate it, but it's like that doesn't feel safe because I'm here to be met. I'm not here to be taken care of. I'm not here to be taken over. And I think that that's an evolution in society, right? Like people are not necessarily looking for someone to save them. People as a whole are looking for people to become in some sort of equal ground with us. And that's going to ebb and flow. There's going to be times that your partner will take care of you and you'll take care of your partner. and we change places, but we're not, as a society, we're moving past that one person is doing everything and the other person is submissive and taking, like taking on this role of like victimhood. Um, so I think that like just in this like, and I do that work a lot with men in our private sessions in this very like gentle way of not cutting you down and being like, bro, like this is wrong. But it's like, oh, let's play that out. Do you see how our conversation shifted? Do you see how you feel safer because of the way that I'm showing up? So, how can you explore that in the spaces that you're holding too?
Now, was that my question?
Sure.
All right. Because and, I'm a little distracted because I was kind of holding on to a thought to something
Yeah.
that you
Say
said.
the
Like when
thought.
you asked that person, like, what's good with you lately? And they just said everything. And I was just
Mm,
immediately thinking about how unsafe that is. Even let's take it to a sexual context. I've had partners, I'm like, hey, what do you like? What do you like? And they're like, you can do anything to me. And that never feels safe, regardless of like how safe they feel with me, which on one hand, that's a compliment. I feel so safe with you that I will let you do anything to me. But then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, what if you don't really mean anything? And if that means you actually don't know what you like, what you want, and then I do something that triggers you or traumatizes you, or, you consent to everything. And then I do something and you're like, I didn't consent to that. And then, we get into this territory. So I started doing this thing where like that's an assessment of my safety. One of my board members, Dr. Eveline Molina Decker, has created this STARS Talk framework. And it's a conversation about how to discuss like relationship expectations. So
mhm,
safety is something that is part of it. The first S is safety, the T is turn ons, the A is avoids, the R is relationship intention and expectations, and then the second S is for sexual health conversations. And so the first S, the safety, is so important to me. Like I am a larger, muscular man, and I don't have to ever really worry about, my physical safety when it comes to like going on a date. But I do have to worry about my mental and emotional safety, or in social settings. I've dated outside my race, and there's an important aspect of that needs to be made aware of too, if we're in social settings where there's all Black people, or if there are not many Black people, right? Or if we're in a setting where, they see me being as big as I am, if I'm dating someone who's smaller than me and of lighter skin complexion, if you raise your voice at me, that's going to be perceived as danger and put me in danger. So the component of safety, right? This is one of those vulnerable things. Like as men, we typically don't want to, look at ourselves as being in an unsafe situation, or we like to think that we can handle anything, or we want to be seen as macho, or like, we're the man, we don't have any worries, right? You should be safe with me. But it's vulnerable to ask for and identify what it is that you need in order to be safe with someone else.
mhm. That's something that comes up a lot for me, right? Like because of the like just the baseline of safety, the way safety is perceived, the way that like we interpret like inherently safety, right? Like you first brought up the physicality of safety. And I think that like ultimately we all default very frequently to, okay, like physical safety is the first thing that we think about with safety, but emotional safety, spiritual safety, mental safety are all like super important. And from this like physicality stance, like yes, you less frequently worry about like your physical safety. And it is stereotyped, and it is more frequent and common that women worry about their physical safety more often. But what I see and witness, and I will hold like BIPOC specific spaces, and I will hold queer specific spaces. And what comes up a lot in the BIPOC specific spaces, and what comes up a lot with men of color, is like in kink space, right? Like kink and BDSM present so many possibilities of like the weird and wild and like excitement that is possible with connection with other people. And in white spaces and in white communities, and with even with white men, like I less frequently, the first or second or fifth thing out of their mouth is less frequently like this like nervousness, anxiety, concern about their safety based on the activities that they're doing, right? And I think that that is a cultural, there's so much to it. It's a cultural thing, it's a societal thing, it's the way, it's the stories that we get fed um, from our families, from our dynamics, from the experiences of others around us that don't always exclusively have to do with the activity, but have to do with the possibilities of what could occur if something goes wrong in this situation. And I love, like, I don't know, I feel like we could talk for like 8 million years. There's so many things that have come up in this
You,
conversation. So
you
I'm
know
definitely
the
gonna be like, Courtney, do you want to come back and have another chat? Because this was not where we started whenever we like first connected. And we first were like, okay, like let's have a chat. And now I'm like fired up. I want to keep you for another hour, but I also want to respect your time and like respect the space.
yeah.
Not like go too far over.
When you said 30 minutes, I was like, I think I remember the first time we talked, it was at least an hour, right? And
We went
we
on for like
thought that
two.
was
It was
gonna,
too
it
long.
was two. All right, I didn't want to say 2 hours. I was like, I think it was a while, but yeah, I very much enjoyed this conversation. I enjoy having these conversations, and yeah, when more fitting or appropriate, if there's ever a way that you would like to work together, collaborate on, a deeper conversation, because I would like to have this like with more people involved, even if that's like in a workshop on dating and safety in dating and relationships. Like I'm happy to do something like that as well. But yeah, in order to maintain the integrity of the time, yeah, I appreciate you having me on here. And I really love that we talked about like other aspects of my identity, not just me having herpes, which I'm finding myself much more drawn to lately. So thank you.
Yeah, and I want to, we can take like a few more minutes to wrap up because I want to give the people possibilities to connect with you on their own, which I will also have in the show notes. But yeah, let's do all the things. I loved all these ideas that you dropped, and I'm glad that this is recorded so I can come back to the notes and be like, wait, what did we say we were gonna do? But what's something that is like on the surface, maybe like behind the scenes that you're working on that you're excited to share with the people? And before you dive into that, sorry, I wanted to comment on something that you said. You are more than just like a man with herpes, right? Like there's so much to that. And I think that that's so much of the work that you're doing, right? You're giving people these like expansive visions beyond something that has happened to them, right? And I think that like even just like maybe this is budding for you, maybe it's something that like happens less like publicly for you, but I love that even if this was like I love that I was a space that you were able to like expand beyond that because that is part of the work that you're doing. You're giving people that hope again beyond something that has been really painful, that has been really hard, that has been stigmatized, that has like really shifted the way that they exist in the world. And so it's beautiful to see and witness and hold space with you existing beyond that too. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to identify that.
thank you.
Um, and I wanted to ask you my bucket list question because I'm nosy and curious, and you can opt out, right? Like you have consent to say no. But my bucket list, I want to kind of like include this in each of the episodes. But my bucket list question that I had for you is, what is something that you haven't experienced sexually yet that you really want to? I know we didn't talk about sex that much, but
Yeah.
throw it into probably
um,
every podcast. So be prepared,
mm,
people.
okay. Something that I have not yet experienced sexually, but I want to. I think something that I have not done is, or at least not successfully, is like have sex in front of other people, sex successfully. So that's been like a thing where it's just been like anxiety driven or something, and that might be linked to something, but uh I know that there's something for like kinks and traumas kind of being interconnected, so I want to like dive deeper into that. And I think that would be something that would be close up on my bucket list of an experience that I've not had yet. Because I think I've avoided it. Like I'll be like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody I have herpes at this party, and then they get, the look if they are doing anything with me, blah blah blah. So yeah, I would like to successfully accomplish that.
Mm, I hope that happens for you. And
Thank you.
I have the highest levels of compersion. So if and when this happens and you want to share, I'm here to listen.
Thank you.
Send me all the details. Um, cool. So thank you for sharing that with us. What's up on the horizon for you that you're excited that we can anticipate that we can look out for?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I had my first ever virtual conference, a herpes stigma conference, and I recorded it and I made it available on the website for people to be able to download, particularly people who are struggling with stigma, healthcare workers, sex educators, therapists, people who might work with people with herpes or partners of people who have herpes, to just learn how to better support people using the information that it doesn't exist, at least at this point. Like there's not a lot of recent relevant information about people's lived experiences with herpes and navigating stigma. So that's at www.spfpp.org. You'll find it on the website somewhere. And then another thing is I'm having a safe sex expo in New York City, September 29th. This event is going to be in person. It's going to be, the theme is navigating the spectrum of safety and pleasure. So we're wanting to facilitate workshops, what we call them play shops, that touch on engagement and interaction around communication, like you mentioned earlier, as well as safety. Like an example that I use is people bringing up sexual health being something that kills the mood, but a person may see that as something that takes away from pleasure, but we can have safety and pleasure in the same sort of relationship dynamics. And I want to bring light to that and show people how to make these conversations more sexy. So we have a couple of people who are going to host some play shops. We're going to have vendors. We're looking for sponsors for the event. We've got a big space available, and this is going to be all day Sunday, September 29th. And then the last thing is I'm working now to put together a men's conference, right? It's not a conference for men exclusively, but I'm calling it a men's conference. I don't have the date yet or the details. I'm reaching out to a couple of men who I would see as aligned on the topic of men and emotions, right? Like I want to call it identifying, or I'm sorry, masculinity through a lens of vulnerability, because so often when we talk about what it is to be a man or what masculinity is, we immediately default to what a woman is, and a man is just not that, or what femininity is and masculinity as not that. But I want for people to be able to look at that through a lens of being able to connect with those feminine or seen as womanly parts of ourselves and emotions. And I'm putting together some facilitators for that. And then I myself will use, so I like anime. I'll use like the main anime characters that people can relate to and kind of their relationships to emotions as a way of using the energy of them when we're able to experience them and take the energy behind them and apply it to a purpose and get things done, and use that to articulate what masculinity is, period. Like none of this, what isn't that, if you will. So those are the main three things that I have on the horizon. And, I run the nonprofit supporting people who are navigating herpes stigma and advocating for the integration of these lived experiences into sexuality education and STI prevention efforts. But yeah, I'm very passionate now about this emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, especially for men who may not have a lot of representation of that in their day-to-day life. So thank you for making space for me to be able to share those things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing them, and thank you for creating them and putting them out into the ethers.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see them, and I'm sure many, many other people will be too.
Thank
Thank you for this chat and this conversation, and just getting my brain all excited. I look forward to just continuing to follow your work and staying connected. And I'll be sure to drop all of these details in the show notes so they're easy for people to access and find. Thank you for joining us today. This is Slow Deep with Uni, formerly known as the Sensory Playspace podcast. You can find out more about today's show and all the things that we dive deep into at slowdeep.co and slowdeep.substack.com.